Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the International Virtual Seminar with the theme of Facing Current Challenges on Democracy, Peace and Security. This seminar is organized by the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, Asia Pacific Peace Research Association, and Indonesia Defense University. To start our seminar today, we will firstly listen to the Indonesian National Anthem of Indonesia Raya. All participants, please turn off or mute your microphone. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, to make this seminar run smoothly, kindly pay attention to the rules of this seminar. First, please log in with your real name, followed by your institution and country. For example, Sri Nuryanti _LIPI _Indonesia. Second, please turn off the microphone to help minimize background noise. You may or may not turn on the camera during the seminar. If you choose to turn the camera on, please maintain respect and appropriateness to the forum. Third, please deliver your questions in the chat room feature in Zoom or in YouTube comments and specify your targeted speaker in the following format: name of the speakers _ questions. Selected questions will be read and answered during the discussion or Q&A session. Fourth, to receive the e-certificate and seminar materials, please fill in the present form through the link that we have shared in the chat room. Fifth, e-certificate will be sent via email at least 1 week after the seminar. And sixth, seminar materials and discussions cannot be openly quoted without permission of the speakers, LIPI and IPRA. 7, please maintain a good conduct during the seminar. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Now we are moving forward to the first agenda of this seminar, that is welcome remarks from the representatives of the co-organizing institutions of this seminar. First, I would like to invite the Deputy of Social Sciences and Humanities, Indonesian Institute of Sciences, Professor Dr. Trinuke Pudiastuti, Master of Arts, to deliver welcome remarks. As the deputy, Professor Nuke is managing 5 research centers, namely the Research Center for Politics, Research Center for Economy, Research Center for Society and Cultures, Research Center for Populations, as well as the Research Center for Area Studies. Without further ado, Professor Nuke, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sandira Harjo. His Excellency Professor Dr. Muhammad Mahfud, MD, Coordinator Minister for Political, Legal, and Security Affairs, Professor Matt Mayer, Secretary General of IPRA, Vice Admiral TNI Dr. Amarullah Octavians, Rector of Indonesia's Defense University, Dr. Manish Sharma, Co-Secretary General from IPRA, distinguished speakers, Dr. Theo Francis Litai, Deputy Vice Chief Expert KSP, Professor Dr. Rosali Archala Hall from University of Philippine Visayas, Mrs. Lena Rikila Tamang from IDE Canberra, and of course, Professor Dr. Firman Nur, our head of Center for Political Studies from LIPI, and our moderator, Dr. Sinorianti, this is from LIPI, but also from Secretary General, Co-Secretary General of APRA, and all distinguished participants. God bless you all, best wishes for you, and good morning. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, on behalf of Indonesian Institute of Science, I would like to express my deepest pleasure to welcome to Your Excellence Coordinator Minister, Rector of Indonesia's Defense University, Secretary General of IPRA, APRA, speakers and participants of international virtual seminar that's called Facing Current Challenges on Democracy, Peace and Security. I'm also delighted to have you here to participate and share in this seminar, even though only through virtual meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to host this important seminar. All of us know well the spread of coronavirus disease is changing how we lead our lives and how political leaders making decisions at the local, national, and global level. The pandemic also has uh, lead to raise the innovations and changes in the way democratic actors such as parliaments, political parties, electoral commissions, civil society organizations, and courts conduct their works. The considerations of political regimes type in debates around ways in the containing the pandemic also assumes particularly relevant in the Asia and the Pacific, a region that houses high-performing democracies such as New Zealand and Republic of Korea, maybe also Taiwan, and also non-democratic regimes such as China, Singapore, and Vietnam. All of these countries, as December 2020, among the lowest per capita deaths from COVID-19 in the world. While these countries have all so far managed to contain the virus with fewer fatalities than in the rest of the world. The authoritarian regimes have done so at a high human right cost. While some of the democrats have done so while adhering to the democratic principle, proving that the pandemic can effectively be fought through democratic means and does not necessarily require a trade-off between public health and democracy. Unfortunately, those are only some democratic countries did. How about the others? We can see also that many governments implemented harsh intervention that might contradict democratic value and civil liberty. Democracy must be aware of these threats, affirm strongly the degradations of democratic rights and political freedom in unnecessary even during the current crisis. Rebuilding society and economic structures in its aftermath will likewise require wrong, sustainable, and healthy democracy capability of tackling a big challenges ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, actually, this is a very big challenges and also danger is that extraordinary action for the extraordinary times can become a normal condition if we are not carefully. LIPI is enthusiastic to cooperate with the APRA, Indonesia's Defense University, to conduct this seminar. I'm sure that speakers who are experts in this uh, in their field can provide an overview of how the implementations of democracy and security and its challenges. Of course, it can also be discussed alternative recommendations that can be brought through to answer these challenges. I believe it will provide an excellent opportunity for various scholar participations, build more space for sharing knowledge. It also gives opportunity to establish wider networks among scholars. This is also urgent for the scholar to think about how to develop solid academic and scientific cooperations in the future. Last but not least, I would like to thank the committee of the seminar from P2P LIPI, Indonesia's Defense University, and APRA, who have worked very hard to manage this seminar possible. I do appreciate it. And thanks to all participants for your great contribution. Once again, I'm delighted to thank you to you all to this seminar. Thank you and have a deep, fruitful discussion. God bless you all and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nuka, for the insightful welcome remarks. For the second welcome remarks, I would like to invite the Secretary General of the International Peace Research Association, Professor Matt Mayer. For your information, this seminar is also a pre-event of the 28th International Peace Research Association General Conference that the main event will be held next week in Nairobi, Kenya. To Professor Mayer, time is yours.
Thank you. Esteemed Honorable Minister, Vice Admiral and other officials, LIPI Director of Society and Humanities, APRA and LIPI members and friends, and my esteemed dear brother and sister, Dr. Mani Sharma, and our extraordinary Dr. Sri Nuryanti, our APRA co-chairs. Professional colleagues and friends all, it is always an honor and pleasure to be with my Indonesian and Asia Pacific cohorts and to have the opportunity to learn from the expansive and inspiring work of LIPI and APRA, whether in person or virtually. Circumstance, however, has once again brought us today, on this very day, to a special opportunity to engage in conversations which have shifted for my people here in the USA over just the past 24 hours. The current challenges facing democracy, peace, and security in the USA, and all influenced by the US, have seen in just the past few hours an assault on constitutional democracy unprecedented in our 244-year history. The sitting president called on protesters to, quote, be wild in a riot designed directly and simply to stop the democratic process, despite the fact that there is zero chance that Trump can remain in office. No substantial parts of the armed forces and military establishment, the business community, the media, elected officials, or even the population at large here wish for Trump to succeed. Let us be warned, however, he has had a success. He has had a success even as the local results of the state of Georgia, also yesterday, suggest that President-elect Biden will not only have control of the executive branch, but that now also both parts of the US Congress, the House and Senate, will be in slight control of the Democratic Party. This all just happened yesterday in the last 24 hours. No, Trump's success is neither short-term nor clearly visible, but it is just as significant, and it can be seen in the seeds sown for the future. Despite Georgia and the presidential election, the mass turnout and affirmation of that election by the courts, Trump's success today, this very day, is in furthering the deterioration of the rule of law, the devaluing of respect for democratic institutions and traditions, and the intensified splits within the US population. How is this a success for him? It is a success for him and for his followers because a hardened neo-fascist and right-wing populist movement has been solidified and empowered and will spend the next 2 and 4 and 10 years organizing and building their strength with the actions of the last 24 hours, a clear symbol for them of what is to be done. Thus, our IPRA founder and peace researcher, Johan Galtung's prediction of the end of the US empire in 2020 was almost perfectly on target. We can see from these actions that some of the foundations of the US empire have led us to this point. They are foundations for everyone around the world to take note of. You cannot build democracy and peace in a nation or in a situation that includes the following elements: genocidal policies against indigenous, native, and enslaved people, in our case, African peoples; colonization of peoples, such as the ongoing direct colonization of Puerto Rico, as well as the occupation of Hawaii, Mexican land, Alaska, and elsewhere; horrific, torturous treatment of prisoners, including the keeping, despite denial, of political prisoners from Black Panther, American Indian, and other anti-imperialist movements; and finally, the ongoing attempts to disempower large numbers of people based on class, race, ethnicity, gender, sex, religion, and other issues in areas of education, healthcare, housing, food, and water. All these things, especially health, which the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed within the US and to the world in clearer form than ever. So therefore, before concluding my remarks and listening carefully to the contributions of our esteemed keynote speaker and all of today's speakers, it is clear that other foundations, including some of the non-aligned and progressive principles enshrined in Indonesia's own past are key to establishing and maintaining true democracy, peace, and justice. Thus, we, all of us, look forward to our friends in Indonesia and Asia Pacific and the global South with a great deal of hope. We also look forward to the independence of West Papua and Kashmir, as well as Puerto Rico, Tibet, Western Sahara, Amazonia, and elsewhere, to see true emancipation and democracy on this fragile but resilient planet of ours. Therefore, on behalf of the International Peace Research Association, on the eve of our 28th Biennial General Conference, which is taking place next week, and we invite you all to join us, IPRApeace.org, that's IPRAPEACE.org. And we welcome you today. We salute you. Your leadership gives all of us in the US and around the entire world great cause for real and concrete hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Next, I would like to invite Rector of the Indonesia Defense University, Vice Admiral TNI Dr. Amarullah Octavian, STM Master of Science, DESD. Indonesia Defense University is one of the prominent universities in Indonesia, which has a good track record in conducting graduate programs in defense studies, both for master and PhD. And since last year, it is also conducting undergraduate program. One of the study program in this university is Peace and Conflict Resolution, which is strongly related to the topic of this seminar. To Pak Rector, time is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandi. Good morning, distinguished Professor Nuke, Professor Meyer, Professor Firman, Dr. Sharma, official IPRA and LIPI, all speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation for me to give a remark in this international seminar. So this is also the honor for the Republic of Indonesia Defense University to join this international seminar. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me a little bit to introduce myself. I am a Vice Admiral Dr. Amarullah Octavian, and my bachelor degree from Indonesian Naval High Tech College, and my previous assignment is the commander of Indonesian Naval Command and Staff College. So in this forum, I would like to introduce also my institution. As we know that Republic of Indonesia Defense University was established in 2009 by the 6th President of Indonesia, Professor Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. Our vision is in 2024, Republic of Indonesia Defense University will become a world-class defense university based on research that preserve national values. Our mission, only to name a few: first, educating candidates for military and civilian leaders who are professional, innovative, and have values of struggle that are obtained empirically, academic, through undergraduate and postgraduate education program. Second, developing defense science as an interdisciplinary line between various disciplines to improve the capability of the national defense system. Third, cooperating with various domestic and foreign agencies and universities to increase and develop science to strengthen national defense. Republic Indonesia Defense University has 8 faculties and divided into 10 undergraduate studies program. 17 magister study program, and 1 doctorate study program. Our study program ranging from defense management, defense strategy, to military medicine, pharmacy, and many more. Our students are coming from different backgrounds, such as active military, government employee, national police, general society, senior high school fresh graduate, and of course, international communities. Ladies and gentlemen, regarding cooperation with LIPI, I need to convey that RIDU has prepared a research master plan for 2020 until 2024 with the theme strengthening economic, social, cultural, defense and security stability, technology, law, and public welfare to create national security stability and the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia. This is the opportunity for both RIDU and LIPI researcher to collaborate and produce strategic study paper. Ladies and gentlemen, in the last part of my talk today, I would like to address current issues related to peace and security on two things. First, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the world politics, peace and security. And the second, a roadmap for sustainable prosperity in Papua. Based on the World Health Organization data, there are more than 83 million confirmed cases with more than 1.8 million deaths. The coronavirus spread all over 222 countries, area, or territories. The virus impacts not only our social life, but also on economy, peace, and security more than a year. The impact of the coronavirus is real and very serious, and no country can handle it alone. We have to work hand in hand to find the solution. As stated in the World Health Organization research and development blueprint, and I quote, the R&D blueprint is a global strategy and preparedness plan that allow the rapid activation of R&D activities during epidemic. It aims to fast-track the availability and effective tests, vaccine, and medicine that can be used to save lives and avert a large-scale crisis. Therefore, world politics is not only a matter of national interest of a nation, but also the interest of other countries. The problem of social culture that is still occurring in several areas in Papua, which has an impact of marginalization and discrimination of the emergence of negative perception of indigenous people, of the performance of government official, military and police, and migrant in Papua. It is necessary the existence of social engineering, which is expected to be able to eliminate the high social gap. The description of the social engineering that need to be done include the stage starting from social arrangement, social resilience, and self-actualization. To improve sustainable prosperity in Papua, faced with the social condition of the people, our recent joint research with LIPI has been able to identify 4 feasible courses of action to solve the problem as follows. First, to set up an integrated food estate. There are 7 customary areas in Papua. The land that is owned in these 7 areas can be used to develop basic commodities so that Papua does not depend on supplies from areas outside Papua. Through the concept of an integrated logistic estate, the logistical support cycle for all Papuan will gradually develop and be able to meet their own needs. Second, to develop territorial resilience. It is expected that through the success of the integrated logistic estate program, territorial resilience will be created. The point is that all Papuan people will be directly involved in securing their respective territories from the interference of separatist group. Territorial resilience will also assist government program. In this case, the Indonesian Ministry of Defense in building non-military defense in Papua. All of this program require cooperative work from all relevant ministries and institutions, local government, official, traditional, and religious leaders. Third, to build integrated solution center. The success of the integrated food estate program and the realization of territorial resilience require an institution that become a media to coordinate, mentoring, advocate, and report on the entire series of activities carried out. The recommendation regarding the need for an integrated solution center is one solution to handle all of these activities. This institution is proposed coordinating by the Indonesian Ministry of Defense as well as regulator in determining policies related to the implementation of the integrated food estate and territorial resilience program. Fourth, optimization of international law in defense diplomacy. The dynamic of the separatist problem in Papua are in fact not only carried out by domestic group. There are a number of activities living abroad who are still gathering international opinion about Papuan independence and separating themselves from the Republic of Indonesia. The optimize of international legal instruments which form the legal basis that Papua is really part of the Republic of Indonesia is well recognized, including in the United Nations Charter, Article 1 and 2, the New York Agreement 1962, UN Resolution number 2504 and 2625, and the non-state government territory in 1962 and 2020, which is state that Papua is not in the non-state government territorial region needs to be socialized to the international community through government agencies abroad. The need to carry out defense diplomacy within the international community is important to convey the sustainable development program that have been implemented by the Indonesian government after the 1969 Act of Free Choice in Papua. Ladies and gentlemen, so this is the result from the joint research from RIDU and LIPI. And as the closing remarks, I would like to thanks once again to Chairman of the LIPI, and also to end my remarks once again, I would like to appreciate this seminar, the committee, and also I do hope the seminar will produce strategic output that can be contributed to the creation of world peace and security as a whole. I thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rector, for the informative welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, I would like to invite also the Co-Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Peace Research Association, Dr. Manish Sharma, to deliver welcome remarks. For your information, Asia Pacific Peace Research Association is one of the regional branches of the International Peace Research Association, which is strongly active in conducting seminars and conferences. The latest IPRA conference has been held last year in Jakarta in 2019. And to Dr. Manish Sharma, time is yours.
Good morning, dear friends, those who are listening to me from different parts of the world. On behalf of Asia Pacific Peace Research Association and on behalf of my other colleagues, I welcome all of you to this online international webinar where we are discussing about the facing current challenges of democracy, peace and security. I'm thankful to my other part, that is the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, LIPI, for giving this opportunity to collaborate our program with them and to share our thoughts and our other details with all of you. I do understand that at some places it's quite early in the morning, though in Chandigarh, in India, that is, it's around 7:30 a.m. of the morning, whereas in Jakarta it is 9 a.m. and in some other parts it's quite late or it's early. Though it's part of the collaboration, so that's why we are giving this trouble. I once again sorry to all of you for giving this trouble, and I'm thankful to the other people also, and the other host also, and those who are joining us from different parts of the world to share their thoughts and to what they are doing at their respective places. Dear friends, as before me, the other personalities had already discussed about some of the aspects, and later on also some more people who are going to discuss about these things. In fact, when we are discussing about facing current challenges of democracy, in that the first name which comes to my mind, that is of Mahatma Gandhi, who discussed about as we can see that the new challenges to the world peace, as according to Gandhi, because when we at the moment we at the end of the bloodiest century in the human history, it's vital that we learn how to solve problems and generate social and political changes non-violently over the last 70 years. And we had witnessed remarkable changes in the non-violent insurgencies and against authoritarian regimes also, and some people have they have received the Nobel Peace Prizes also while using the non-violent techniques. But many of the individuals and the other reports which have been received by the major attention by the media and by certain political consequences of these large pro-democracy movements, which have certainly been examined and are yet to be examined, despite its widespread diffusion as a conscious movement around the world in recent decades, and its central role in tectonic shifts in geopolitics of the late 20th century. We still understand very little about non-violence as a technique for social change. Non-violence is not even a category in the mainstream academics, and moreover, we are yet to use non-violent as a means of conflict transformation, or maybe we can say in terms of mediation. Although non-violence is as ancient as the violent struggle, non-violent strategies have not been developed or analyzed with the same energy and resources as military and other violent means, and its widespread deliberate use is relatively new phenomena in the human history. We have no large non-violent academies or that runs according to parallel military academics, or the widespread units of peace brigades which are stationed to intervene non-violently in crisis situations, though very little had been done by at the UN level also in the UN peacekeeping forces, but still it need to be taken up at a larger level. Now, both the problems that non-violent movements seek to address are increasingly the global issues and the non-violent philosophies and strategies used and borrowed from movements around the world. As theories and strategies of resistance are disseminated through the media, transnational organizations, and the published work of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Jane Sharp, Nelson Mandela, and others, the participants in the social movements are sharing their wisdom with one another to challenge and change the system of social control that is increasingly global in nature. Buddha taught that the first precept of his eightfold path was not to kill, and the ancient Hindu techniques of the Vedas stressed the importance of the ahimsa, that is non-harmless, harmfulness, or the non-violence. Gandhi firmly and strongly believed in the application of non-violent methods to fight against racial discrimination, exploitation, injustice, and also to bring about real social change. In practice, he adopted it a way of life to resolve all kinds of conflict in society. Accordingly, there is a need to focus and highlight, discuss, and analyze the various methods and events where Gandhi applied his non-violent methods to meet the challenges under various compelling circumstances. Gandhi was a more a practical man. That is why he had a firm belief in the practical progressive non-violence, and that's why John V. Bandura she termed Gandhi as a true Kram Yogi. The application of Gandhi's Satyagraha has worldwide significance, not only which is known by a few, how to use this great weapon of non-violence. In fact, many people do not know what does exactly Gandhi meant by the non-violence, and they not only misunderstand, they misinterpret Gandhi also and his view of non-violence, but also misinterpret, as I mentioned, that they abuse the same without knowing the real meaning. Therefore, the focus here is to go through the entire gamut of his writing and speeches and to find out the truth and the exact meaning of this important concept. And I'm thankful to my co-organizers that they had given this opportunity to share our views through these dialogues. And the various factors which are helping in making Gandhi view in this respect need to be thoroughly examined, and despite its widespread diffusion as a conscious movement around the world, we still understand little about non-violence as a technique for social change. Uh, the other focus it should be to unearth some of the answers here for a better understanding of the apostle of the non-violence, truth and non-violence, the principle for which the world is trying to review, as Martin Luther King Jr. has rightly said that Mahatma, I quote, Mahatma Gandhi was the first person in human history to live the ethics of violence, of ethics of love of Jesus Christ above mere interaction between individuals and make it into a powerful and effective social force as on a large scale. If humanity is to progress, Gandhi is inescapable, and we may ignore him at our own peril. Unquote. The history records not only shows that the use of violence in the conquest of the other people, but the use of non-violent methods for the liberation for the masses also. Non-violent methods not only free India from the British rule, but were also instrumental for the ending of the colonial rule in scores of the other countries around the world. African American in the United States and the rights for women were won by the non-violent methods. And the recent example could be of Aung San Suu Kyi, also from Burma. The non-violent in practice is not utopian, but the ultimate effective form of power, since imposition of a military force is eventually unstable and breeds antagonism and passive resistance. At the time of Iraq crisis, we've seen that as soon as the Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, a public debate sprung up about the merits of attack or the sanctions. But from the point of view of this two force theory, sanctions are a form of attack, maybe of a milder form, quite possibly in some situations a correct form maybe, but one that is not different in kind from the force that sends planes over the air space of another state, for example, if it is not been persuaded by the sanctions. We know how know that what kind of hardships has befallen the ordinary citizens, and especially the innocent children of Iraq as a result of this alternative to violence. The sanctions attack are different degrees of the power that arises from the threats in the form of, I would say, punishment. So we have to understand the different ABCs of the different kind of ideologies here also, and to understand the Gandhian ideology, the philosophy on which he tried to bring the concept of brotherhood. And in fact, the choice has to be that, as I'll already mentioned about Martin Luther King Jr., that the choice is ours, whether we want to see future only in dreams or we want to see it in reality, keeping in view of the pandemic kind of situation, of the COVID like situation, where we are not happy to see each other in different forms. And we had seen the ugliest face of humanity during this pandemic period. And if we are going to follow the violent methods blindfoldedly, then the humankind will not survive and the end would be very near. So we have to decide about our approach, the right or the wrong, whether we want to save our kids and kin, or we want to destroy them. And the relevance of Gandhi's non-violence would be there for generations to come, though it has been mentioned by other also. But we have to see the non-violence is just not like this, the light of sun, but it's the whole soul survival of the humanity also. The efficiency of Gandhi's non-violence is eternal and enduring, but many do not try to understand and implement fully in their day-to-day lives. If it fails, the failure is not due to the philosophy, but due to the failure of humankind, human mind, which needs the civilization or the cultivation of the highest moral of the values, virtues like humility, patience, religious tolerance, compassion, friendliness, discipline, and above all, aptitude to serve the fellow human beings, which we are lacking in our day-to-day working. So the non-violent may not provide too much material dividends, but it provides satisfaction, inner peace, and healthy environment to live and serve the mankind. With this, I finishes my 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 speech here, and I'm again thankful to my other friends also, those who had come from different parts of the world, that they had come to 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 be in this webinar, in this to join with us, and to give us this opportunity to share our thoughts with each other and everyone. I'm once again wishing you a very happy and healthy corona free new year. Once again, thank you and happy new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mani Sharma. Ladies and gentlemen, entering the second agenda today, we are very honored to have the Coordinating Minister for Political, Legal, and Security Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, Professor Dr. Muhammad Mahfud MD, in this seminar. Pak Mahfud will deliver his keynote speech on the theme of the seminar from the perspective of the Indonesian government. Your Excellency, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Honorable Head of the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, LIPI, Honorable Head of the Asia Pacific Peace Research Association, IPRA, guests. First of all, allow me to congratulate the Indonesian Institute of Sciences and the Asia Pacific Peace Research Association to the collaboration to this virtual seminar on facing current challenges of democracy, peace, and security. I would like also welcome all the participants joining this seminar today. It's unfortunate that due to the COVID-19, we can only do it virtually. This seminar is important because, on one hand, the development of democracy is an inevitable demand for the government in this modern era, while on the other hand, the spirit of democracy often creates vertical and horizontal conflicts, which often disrupts the peace, order, and security of a country. I would like to quote an old article by Clifford Geertz entitled Integrative Revolution, Primordial Sentiments and Civil Politics in the New States. Although Geertz's writing is published quite long time ago, its content is still relevant enough to explain the situation regarding the symptoms of distortion in the democracy that we face. An example of which our experience in Indonesia nowadays. In his writing, Clifford Geertz mentions the dilemma that is often faced by new democratic countries because they are required to build two things at once: even though they are often conflicting. Those two are democracy and integration. Democracy is needed not only to put people at a central position and a determinant for the policy direction of the government of the state, but also as a decision-making mechanism regarding state policies in a pluralistic nation-state with various primordialities. Meanwhile, integration is needed so that a pluralistic nation remains united in a strong national bond. The dilemma is that democracy and integration often go in the opposite direction. Some even say they have a contradictory character. Democracy wants to open up a broad spectrum of freedom so that every person or group of people, including primordial groups, can fight for their aspiration freely, whereas integration tends to want to corrupt freedom so that the nation remains united and not divided. Many countries can overcome this, but some countries cannot easily overcome the issues and are still looking for an appropriate format that can harmonize the journey of democratic development and integration for the two to become in harmony. Despite being not in the extreme pre-matter, Indonesia's experience in several stages of history has faced the same dilemma, including the recent development. At the beginning of the political change in Indonesia, it's always marked by the spirit of democratization, but over time, it leads to certain excessive interpretation of freedom. Consequently, to maintain integration, the government then is required to take certain repressive measures. In the Reformation era, Indonesia initially succeeded in stopping the New Order government, which was considered authoritarian and was too strict in guarding the integration by enforcing some extremely repressive measures. The Reformation era since 1998 started by reforming the political system, such as revising various laws in the political sector, amending the 1945 Constitution, abolishing the dual function of the military, forming new institutions intended to monitor the performance of the government so as not to fall into authoritarianism and policy regime that is undemocratic. Initially, this democratization policy worked quite well. The 1999 election was considered a democratic election, both in terms of its regulation and implementation. In the field of legal development, Indonesia has established a Corruption Eradication Commission, KPK, Constitutional Court, Judicial Commission. It has also revoked expansion of regional autonomy, strengthened civil society, and so on. So, in the beginning, the journey of reform had indeed built a political system that was conducive to democracy and constitutional supremacy. But over time, this democratization began to cause problems because it was considered to have open and overstretched interpretation and practice of freedom, including the freedom to fraud and deception, accompanied by various political transactions at the elite level, thus growing the seeds of oligarchy. Meanwhile, at the community level, movements that are not easy to control have grown, so that territorial integration and ideological integration begin to experience disruption, polarization, and contradictions in the process, affected by the emerging primordial thesis. This situation is exacerbated by the emergence of various hoaxes through digital technology that has led to what is often referred to as digital arbitrariness. The public therefore demanded the presence of the state by taking firm action against the distortion of democracy, which began to threaten integration and disrupt the peace, order, and security of our life. The government is trying to take measured steps to maintain a balance between the right to democracy and the obligation to maintain that integration. The debate will, of course, continue through a fairly strong political process that is pulling against one another. That is, the calls for freedom as a spirit of democratization on one side, and the calls for firm action and evidence of the state's presence in maintaining integration of the country on the other side. Practically speaking, in realizing this process, it is often colored with hoaxes and distortion in the digital platform. It is sometimes even difficult for us to find boundaries and making the choice between action of building democracy and maintaining integration. When integration is being enforced too strictly, the government is accused of being authoritarian. But when it is too liberating in its democratic process, the state is considered allowing democracy itself under threats. Normatively, we all know the boundary is the law supremacy, but that is always easier said than done. Indeed, this is the point where I see the importance of this virtual seminar on facing current challenges of democracy, peace, and security. We hope that this prestigious seminar will not only redefine the problems that we always face and we try to deliberate, but whenever possible, we can also find a more acceptable strategy and implementable steps. That is, building democracy without jeopardizing integration, without being trapped in the dilemma of being able to choose between the two. Thank you, and I wish you a fruitful seminar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Your Excellency. After listening the insightful welcome remarks and keynote speech, now we are moving forward to the third agenda of this seminar, that is presentation and discussion session. We are now connecting with the prominent speakers from various respective institutions. We have Pak Theo Francis Litai from the Office of the Presidential Staff, Indonesia, Professor Dr. Firman Nur from the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, Professor Dr. Rosali Arsala Hall from the University of the Philippine Visayas, as well as Lina Rikila Tamang from the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. To lead the sessions, I would like to invite Dr. Sri Nurianti to become the moderator of the seminar. Dr. Sri Nurianti is a senior researcher at the Research Center for Politics, Indonesian Institute of Sciences. Currently, she also serves as the Co-Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Peace Research Association. Dr. Sri Nuryanti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm very delighted to have you all here today, this morning until today in the afternoon. We are very delighted because I think this is in the beginning of the year where we could have and hosting the seminar, although we have to do it virtually. As you may know already, that current challenges include the COVID-19 pandemic has been affecting every aspect of life and altering the way the social life of the people. So in this case, democratic countries has been challenged as to whether the democratic countries have to go on with their own agenda for democratic event and other a democratic exercise, or they have to also deal with something else. Countries actually this time are forced to keep an eye also of their own local and internal dynamics. Some countries have to deal with their homegrown challenges. And this, for today seminar, we would like to have speakers from uh, for prominent speakers from the office of executive office of the President of the Republic Indonesia. We also have a speaker from the Indonesian Institute of Sciences. We have speakers from International IDEA, and also we have speaker from University of Philippines in Visayas. So without further ado, I would like to call upon our first speaker, Dr. Theo Francis Litai, the Deputy from the Deputy 5 of the Executive Office of the President of the Republic of Indonesia. He is he is a senior advisor for the Executive Office of the President uh, of the Republic of Indonesia. He is graduated. He is also a lecturer from University Kristen Satya Wacana. And without further ado, I would like to call upon the presence of Dr. Theo. Time is yours. 15 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Sri, for this opportunity. And thank you very much to LIPI and APPRA for the invitation for the Executive Office of the President to be the part of this international virtual seminar. Forgive me for not preparing the PowerPoint presentation, but I have talking points material that I will supply to the committee today. Ladies and gentlemen, the global pandemic coronavirus disease or COVID-19 is an emergency for many countries that have drastically changed human life across the globe. All countries suddenly have to change their government and development activities and answer various problems that arise suddenly. The Indonesian government, on the one hand, is also faced with various pressing challenges in handling COVID-19, and on the other hand, is here to ease the burden on citizens in this COVID-19 pandemic. For this reason, the government pays attention to health, social, and economic problems by both the central and local governments. President Joko Widodo's leadership role is very prominent and is the hope of the people in handling this situation. The COVID-19 pandemic not only brings health problems, but also other follow-up problems, such as economic slowdown that has resulted in both potential domestic security disturbances, and potential tensions in the region. For this reason, President Jokowi gave a perspective to regional leaders that cooperation is the only option in maintaining regional stability so that countries can handle the pandemic effectively. In relation to regional security stability issues, while attending virtually the second ASEAN-Australia Summit in mid-November 2020, President Joko Widodo conveyed to the heads of state and heads of government that stability and security in the region are the foundation for recovery efforts post-epidemic economics. President Jokowi's commitment to international law is strong, as the president stated that respect for international law, including UNCLOS 1982 and the implementation of the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific to create prosperity for the community and the region, and invite world leaders to work together in difficult times. Similarly conveyed by President consistently in the general debate session of the 75th General Assembly of the United Nations, that the spirit of cooperation and peace is being endorsed by Indonesia to the wider region, the Indo-Pacific region, through the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Indonesia's foreign policy is a free and active politics. Therefore, we are called to create collective stability and security in the region for the sake of mutual prosperity. The next part of this presentation I will deliver in the perspective of the Executive Office of the President based on Presidential Decree number 83 of 2019. The Executive Office of President is functions among others as follows: to control of national priority programs, to ensure that they are implemented in accordance with the vision and mission of the President, to support accelerated implementation of national priority programs and strategic issues, monitor and evaluate the implementation of national priority programs and strategic issues. In this opportunity, our presentation will focus on strategic issues and national priority programs, which are monitored by the Executive Office of the President, or KSP. In accordance with the 2020 and 2024 RPJMN, security development in 2021 in Indonesia is directed at realizing a sense of security and peace for all people, as well as the territorial integrity of the Republic of Indonesia and the country's sovereignty. The direction of security development policies in response to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic requires a conducive situation through law enforcement and security creation or law and order. According to National Priority Number 7, in the Presidential Decree Number 89, year 2020, on 2021 Government Work Plan, or RKP, it is directed to strengthen the stability of law, defense, and security policy and transformation of public services. Therefore, strengthening the aspect of resilience and security and improving good governance are the keys to overcoming the continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic through risk mitigation. The strategic issue in the defense and security sector is the high threat to national security stability. For example, the spread of the COVID-19 virus, act of terrorism and separatism, guarantee of security, circulation of narcotics, the potential for cyber attacks, airspace defense, and maritime security. The target to be achieved is to maintain national security stability throughout the Republic of Indonesia. In the context of recovering from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, important activities that will be carried out include improving the Ministry of Defense, or TNI and Polri hospitals all across Indonesia, and increasing non-war military operation, or OMSP, for disaster management and contingency, including COVID-19 pandemic as part of the disaster. Important strategic priority projects in 2021 are among others strengthening NSOC and strengthening maritime security in Natuna. Several regulations that need attention include the Criminal Code Bill, or KUHP, the Bill on Confiscation of Assets for Criminal Acts, and the Bill on Amendment to Law Number 39, year 2009 on narcotics. And also, as we know, there is a discussion about the prospect of the National Security Bill. The available data shows the condition of security and order nationally is quite positive. The December SMRC survey showed that the majority of citizens, around 60%, rated the condition of national security as good or very good. The security condition was considered to be unfavorable in October 2020 regarding the rejection of the work creation law, but this situation recovered afterwards. One type of crime that increased in number during the COVID-19 pandemic was cybercrime. January to November 2020 data recorded 4,250 of the number of cybercrimes handled by the police. The types of cybercrime that are increasing are defamation, fraud, and illegal access related to money laundering. Another thing is the increase in hate speech, which reached 5,561 tweets. Ms. Moderator, that's my introduction. That's my presentation for time being. I hope that this will enable us to produce a fruitful and productive discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pak Theo. I know that the government of the Republic of Indonesia has a lot of challenges that has to be faced. And from the presentations of Pak Theo, Dr. Theo, we know that the government of the Republic of Indonesia trying to do its best to implement some strategic policies to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, and also other challenges include to maintain stability and security as a fundamental aspect of life in Indonesia. So I know that there are a lot of challenges and also a lot of questions. Maybe from the audience later on you can type in the chat box. And now I would like to call upon the presence of Professor Firman Nur. Professor Firman Nur is the head of the Center for Political Studies, the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, LIPI. And he is, during the time when he is inaugurated as a professor, he is the youngest professor of LIPI. So I would like to ask you to give presentations about 15 minutes on the topic. Please, time is yours. You still mute.
Sorry. Okay, thank you, moderator. Dr. Yanti. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Mahfud MD, Honorable Professor Dr. Ahmed Mia, Professor Dr. T. Nuka Pujastuti, Vice Admiral Dr. Amarullah Octavia, and Dr. Manish Sharma as Co-Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Peace Research Association. And distinguished fellow speakers, it is great to be here. And in this seminar, I'd like to share my paper titled Pandemic COVID-19 and the Challenge for Democracy, Indonesian Case. Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, democracy is still an advanced political system in the world. Most people believe that democracy is the best system that humankind can carry on. However, as we can see, there is always challenge for democracy. Some of them is indeed very serious. In the last couple of years, the challenge for democracy tends to increase, which the stagnation or regression of democracy in some countries appears to be the result. The data from Economics Intelligence Unit, for instance, indicates that there has been stagnation quality of democracy during the last decade from 5.55 in 2008 to 5.44 in 2020. Data from Freedom House in 2008 says around 72 democratic countries has returned to be country with authoritarian characteristics or tendencies. One of the most known assumptions is democracy today has been hijacked by oligarchs or elements of anti-democracies that manipulate democracy process to establish their own existence and interests. In a such global situation, in 2020, the countries over the world enters a new and even historical moment, namely COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 pandemic in general, as has been mentioned by previous speaker, has created new habits and attitudes. In terms of political landscape, it creates new policies, regulation, and mindsets for government and the people. The question is whether this pandemic worsened the quality of democracy. At the first glance, in particular during the first months of the pandemic, many scholars, institutions, and observers tend to believe that it is. The pandemic will certainly deteriorate democracy quality. One of the main arguments is there will be a lot of restriction for the people made by the government or the states in the name of people's safety or the citizen rights. In this situation, there is a tendency to give the state more rights to do anything necessarily, and on the other hand, limited the people movement and roles. It gives to give state more and people less. The most important point is during the pandemic era, the people quite intriguing with the possibility for the government to centralize many authorities, including in decision-making process, to ensure that everything is under control and keep it in line with the creation of solution for the impact of the pandemic. The totalitarian temptation, in quote, was assumed to easily spread out. In this situation, the state could afford and use any sources to implement policies. Some regulations are passed in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, sometimes without proper consultation. Some state forbids people to gather or go to some places and even make profiling of them. Freedom House stated that, in quote, since the coronavirus outbreak began, the condition of democracy and human rights has grown worse in 80 countries. Governments have responded by engaging in abuse of power, silencing their critics, and weakening or shattering important institutions often undermining the very systems of accountability needed to protect public health. However, as time goes by, above assumption is not necessarily the case. Indeed, the pandemic in some countries has strengthened the grip of authoritarian regimes towards the people. They tend to be more restrictive and using autocracy approach by mainly providing top-down policies without questions. However, the decline political quality has been predicted does not really exist in all cases. In democratic countries, the political situation in general tends to be as well. In fact, democracy not only could survive, but also could provide some benefits for the country. Some important lessons learned from what happened in some democratic countries that have been successful in dealing with the pandemic. For instance, Germany, Finland, Norway, New Zealand, Taiwan, or South Korea, is that democracy has given a fair chance for the people, societies, and communities to get involved in decision-making. In this situation, together with the democratic government, they then provide more down-to-earth and workable solution to them. In short, it is clear that their success story has deeply related to how democracy values to mechanism is really implemented. Now, how about the political condition in the countries that is categorized not fully democratic? For me, the situation is to some extent also the same. The government in such a country tends to carry on their main characteristic in managing the countries. In this case, likewise, the pandemic is not necessarily becoming a silent factor that influences the way the state governs the country, but in many ways have potential to make it worse. For a such phenomenon, Freedom House stated that, in quote, the COVID-19 pandemic is exacerbating the 14 years of consecutive decline in freedom. It is particularly acute in struggling democracy and highlight repressive states. In other words, setting that already had weak safeguards against abuse of power suffering was. In the Indonesia case indicates that situation, that the characteristic of government played a silent role, and the COVID-19 pandemic actually plays only part of it. Before the pandemic, many observers had characterized Indonesian democracy as flawed, elusive, delegative, partly free, or unconsolidated. Indeed, democracy in Indonesia in general is still operating peacefully. The hope of the people for democracy is still high, even for among the developing countries. However, a threat from oligarchs, poverty, unnatural democracy, press, police, weak civil society, partial rules of law, politicization of identity make Indonesian democracy seems not totally developed. What happened today is that even though Indonesia has successfully undergone the democratic transition, the result has not met the ideal type of democracy. The last Komnas HAM, National Commission of Human Rights survey indicates the worrisome situation since around 36.2% respondents claim that today they are afraid to convey their opinion and critiques towards the government through internet channels and social media. Now I'd like to highlight 3 cases for Indonesian. The 3 last cases confirm this situation. The first is the case of the Omnibus Law. This case becomes one of the most controversial regulations in Indonesia that was stipulated in 2020. The government is regulation some advantage for business activities since it will create environment ease of doing business atau kemudahan berusaha. However, according to some observers, this regulation has serious problems, mainly related to the substance of this regulation, which tends to push laborers to the less fortunate condition. Some local people custom right activists are also worried about this regulation, since it will deteriorate the rights of local people vis-a-vis big company. Also, the controversy occurred in the making process itself. For many labor activists, only a certain or selected people or organization that was invited in the decision-making process of this regulation. Furthermore, since this regulation consists of 11 clusters, around 80 laws, and more than 1,200 articles, was hoped by the president could be stipulated as soon as possible. The decision-making process was conducted quite fast. For this reason, two parties in the parliament, Partai Keadilan Sejahtera and Partai Demokrat, reject this regulation, for it was not properly discussed. Prior to and after the government stipulated this regulation, massive demonstration in many parts of Indonesia occurred, initiated mainly by the laborers and students. This indicates a very rejection of people towards this policy. For the people who criticize and reject this regulation, the Omnibus Law is a reflection of the elitism or oligarchy tendencies. But the stipulation of the Omnibus Law was basically in line with the government political system characteristic rather than the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The second case is the implementation of 2020 concurrent local election or Pilkada Serentak. For many people, the implementation of 2020 concurrent local election was questionable. They don't really see the urgency for these activities or the elections. Besides that, the possibility to create a new COVID-19 cluster, since it was held in several red zones, was quite open. The other thing is related to the quality of the election itself, that will be less participative and transparent because of the pandemic. And most importantly, it will not create a significant improvement for the quality of the election compared to the previous ones. The fact was, before the election day, several violations occurred, indicating the disappointment of the government and other elements in ensuring that the COVID-19 protocol would be properly conducted during the election process. However, as we know, the 2020 concurrent local election was finally held. The implementation of this election once again was a must for a government, even though maybe not necessarily the case for the people. This situation again indicates the top-down policy and less dialogue approach as the characteristic of the government. This finding also confirms the hypothesis that COVID-19 pandemic could worsen the political situation, particularly in making and implementing policies. The last case is related to the Habib Rizik Syihab arrival. To the government, it is clear that Syihab, who also the leader of the Islamic Defender Front, or FBI, or FPI, had violated some regulation in relation to the COVID-19 protocol, in particular in encouraging people to attend a massive gathering in Soekarno-Hatta Airport and other places. For this main reason and other thing, Syihab was then jailed. Not long time ago, the FPI itself was finally banned by the government. Some people regard government's act and policy was inconsistent. They even reckon it is a part of opposition restriction due to the Syihap's political position towards government. As we know, Syihab is one of the figures that consistently played as opposition during Jokowi administration. The case of Syihab indicates that pandemic issue is used to legitimize government restriction. In general, the treatment towards Syihab would most likely be still conducted whether the COVID-19 pandemic exists or not. From those cases, there are some lessons learned. First, COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in the new habits and awareness in many ways. However, it is the characteristic of government and its capability in governing that has given more impact towards democracy existence and politics in general rather than the pandemic itself. However, the assumption that believes that COVID-19 pandemic in some cases could worsen the quality of democracy and governance, particularly in the states where democracy is not established or exists yet, in some cases is still acceptable. Moreover, in the Indonesian case, the government consistency implementing democracy values and procedure is needed. It is mainly to maintain people trust towards government and democracy itself. Last but not least, government consistency in running COVID-19 protocol is at most needed, because only with this kind of attitude, people support towards government policies will be productive and effective. I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Firman. I know that you are quoting some report from Economist Intelligence Unit and other institutions that mentioning on regressions of democracy, whether the pandemic worsened the conditions of democracy. And Professor Firman already mentions on the case of Indonesia. What about the situation in Asia and Pacific region? Professor Matt Mayer just in his talk mentioning about what was happening in United States recent these days. Professor Nuka also mentioning about how leaders are making decisions on, and she also mentioned pandemic has also led to a range of changes in our life. Dr. Sharma mentioned that pandemic may be also creating other challenges, not only the absence of violence, but also other challenges. While Vice Admiral Dr. Amarullah Octavian mentioning that the true thing is for sustainable and prosperity for the society. So I would like to call upon the presentations of Lina Rikilatamang. I would like to call her up. Lina Rikilatamang is the director for the Asia and the Pacific region, and also the overseas country programs in Myanmar, Nepal, and Bhutan. Lina Rikilatamang joined International IDEA in 2002, and between 2004-2013, she managed International IDEA program on supporting constitution building process in Nepal. She created and supported initiative aiming and forging consensus on political reform and to develop capacity of Nepali stakeholders on constitutional option. Tamang is also former Secretary General of Finland Advisory Board for Relation with Developing Countries. So she is a member of former chair 2001 to 2002 of the Network Institute for Global Democracy, NIGD. Amongst her work with NIGD, she coordinates project promoting North-South dialogues on democracy and globalization and was involved in the World Social Forum process. She is also former board of Asia Europe ASEF Foundation and has been teaching at the University of Tampere in the Department of Political Science and International Relations in Finland. So without further ado, I would like to call Lina to present on global state of democracy in Asia and the Pacific. Time is yours, about 15 minutes, Lina. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, as moderator Sri Nurianti and respected organizers, fellow speakers, and all distinguished participants from Indonesia and from around the world. Greetings from Canberra, from Australia, where International IDEA's regional Asia and the Pacific regional office is located. And we are very proud of Indonesia being International IDEA's member state, and hence we are keen to collaborate with Indonesia and other regional organizations. What I will do is to present you with a couple of top findings from our Global State of Democracy report and on Asia and the Pacific chapter in particular, discussing how the democracy was doing pre-pandemic and then taking stock of democracy now during the COVID-19, recognizing that the pandemic is far from being over and all its societal and democratic implications are probably yet to reveal themselves. And given the time limitations, I will provide you just a few highlights and teasers, which will hopefully entice you to investigate these reports more carefully, available from our website. The purpose of this slide is really to demonstrate what are we measuring when we are measuring democracy. In our framework, we have 5 core attributes of democracy, which are the last circles that you see, and which IDEA believes are key elements of any healthy democracy. So those include representative government, fundamental rights, checks on government, impartial administration, and participatory engagement. And then there are sub-attributes, and the indices cover 158 countries across the world since 1975, over the last 45 years. And these indices are then updated yearly. And this is the reason being that we do want to take a longer perspective in order to track and recognize trends over time. And then statistical data is generated related to these attributes, sub-attributes, and indicators, related indicators. But I won't dwell on this methodological side for too long here. For starters, to say that on what it comes to democratization, yesterday was not better in Asia and Pacific. Asia Pacific is more democratic now than it has ever been in its history. And over the last 44 years, the number of democracies have doubled from 7 to 15, and there has been a reduction of non-democracies. This expansion has been driven by democratic transitions, Myanmar and Malaysia, examples from the last 4 years. And most of the transitions, even if often elite negotiated, were driven and pushed from below rather than being a result of full collapse of previous regimes. And this may be the reason why regions' democracies have proven quite resilient, but also at times vulnerable to what can be called loud executive action. Not so good news is that regions still have a number of authoritarian regimes. Half of the countries in Asia do not currently have democratically elected governments, and 40% of Asian countries have never experienced democracy in their history. And another negative finding is that the hybrid regimes, referring to countries that go through the motions of elections, which are, however, not fair or competitive, the hybridity has not been really a stepping stone for more democratization, but has become a long-lasting category of itself. Democracy in the region comes in many forms and shapes. Majority of the region's democracies are what we call mid-range democracies, doing relatively well with some major weaknesses, Indonesia being one of these countries. We have 20% of high-performing democracies, Republic of Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, and weak democracies remain a worry. Another big worry is the couple of important large democracies declining rapidly over the last couple of years, and I will get back to that in a minute. I will not dwell on these attributes for long. These are here simply showing us a couple of things. Number one, how differently sub-regions are doing on various aspects of democracy, from largely authoritarian Central Asia to democratic Oceania. Secondly, democratic aspects with the most improvements over the time relate to direct democracy, basic welfare, local democracy, clean elections, and civil society participation. I think it's notable that the region has made significant advances on electoral processes and institutions, and in East Asia in particular, also on fundamental rights. Least advances have taken place with checks on government, and impartial administration, including absence of corruption, which continues to undermine achievements of many of the other aspects of democracy. But the problems remain and are intensified over the last 5 years. More than half of Asian democracies suffer from some degree of democratic erosion, what is called gradual decline. And already pre-pandemic, number of countries were experiencing deepening autocratization and democratic backsliding. Source of concern is that two important democracies of the region, India and Philippines, with declines over the last 5 to 9 years, have been declining to extent what we can call democratic backsliding. And this has continued during the pandemic as well. It's also to be noted that democracies such as Australia, Japan, New Zealand had also suffered some erosion, as have Indonesia, Mongolia, and Timor-Leste. And these erosions are mainly linked to weakening checks and balances and restrictions on civil liberties. I wanted to quickly show you some findings on Indonesia, which is a mid-range performing a democracy, and as is well known, became democracy in 1997 and has done steady progress on many aspects of democracy over the since 1997, and as was also mentioned by the minister and Professor Firman just now. If you look at the last 10 years over various attributes, and as we know, globally speaking, and also as many other indices, just as Freedom House suggests, there has been last 15 years has been really the era of democratic decline in the world. It seems that Indonesian democracy has not declined dramatically over the last 10 years. Perhaps more important to note is that advance on some aspects has been quite slow. There has been some declines, even if ever so slight, on representative government and on fundamental rights. Perhaps more detailed look of these attributes tells us that the declines have taken place on clean elections, but also on freedom of movement and freedom of expression. At the same time, it is to note that Indonesia scores much above Southeast Asian average on what it comes to representative government. Another observation is that impartial administration, which includes absence of corruption, the initial score is quite low and not much progress has been made. On an absence of corruption is expected to be perhaps worsening when the data from 2020 is coming out. In terms of major improvements, the category of participatory engagement has improved significantly. So I would be very much interested in also your interpretation of this picture. What is interesting, of course, is what is behind this data and what explains these declines and advances and which trends are likely to continue. So let us take a quick look at the specific impact of COVID-19 in the region from the democracy and human rights point of view. This first one is the global picture, telling us how more than half of the countries covered by our global monitoring tool had implemented measures to curb COVID-19 that are of concern from democracy and human rights perspective. I think it's reasonable to say that all countries in the world have imposed some kind of restrictions on basic freedoms and democratic rights during the COVID-19 pandemic, and for obvious reasons. However, in 38%, they were of temporary nature and imposed in the context of constitutionally defined state of emergency. So what do we mean by concerning developments? Measures in these 62% of the countries are considered transgression of democratic standards because they were either disproportionate, illegal, indefinite, or unnecessary in relation to the issue that they were to address. And the same, this is how it looks like in Asia and the Pacific. As you can see, the number of countries with concerning developments is slightly higher than the global average, which was 62%. And these are the countries with most concerns, confirming perhaps the hypothesis that the countries that were ailing before the pandemic continued to do so. The authoritarian regimes would be tightening their grip and the weak democracies being at risk. But also that many of the medium and high-performing democracies were able to draw from their strengths, sometimes perhaps a latent strengths. And if not coming out unstretched, were able to sustain democracy and human rights and take care of the public health at the same time. In many ways, the pandemic has been perhaps an X-ray of our societies, revealing the strengths and the weaknesses of our political systems. And I should also mention perhaps here that globally speaking, also the many of the best performers in terms of managing the pandemic and safeguarding democracy are indeed from Asia and the Pacific region. In terms of impact of the pandemic, one casualty has been the elections. Asia offers several examples of elections carried out safely and with integrity during the pandemic. And perhaps contrary to the global trend, more than half of polls in Asia and the Pacific has taken place rather than being postponed, with notable exception, of course, of Hong Kong elections postponed for a year or perhaps longer. Region is also bucking the trend of lower voter turnouts. Instead, many elections have seen similar or even higher turnouts. Korea in April, Mongolia in June, while admittedly this has not been the case everywhere. Some of the concerning developments relate to, number one, to personal integrity and security. To the fact that military has been a law enforcers also in democracies such as in the Philippines and in Sri Lanka. Excessive police force in enforcing lockdowns or countering protests. Criminalization and use of contact tracing apps for political purposes, perhaps particularly so in China. And very high percentage of the region's hybrid and authoritarian regimes have curbed freedoms of expression, but also around 50 of the democracies, at least temporarily so. Media integrity has been one of the hardest hit by restrictions in region's democracies. Measures and actions have ranged from harassment of journalists, restrictions on access to information, and shutdown of news sites, to criminalizations and also arrests. Just a quick look at the summary of the Indonesia that has deployed significant welfare programs for its citizens and openly also reported about the data about the pandemic. Yet the media integrity, freedom of expression have been curtailed amid the pandemic under the cause of stopping disinformation, and concerns are raised about the detention of people under the criminal defamation law. Concerns have also been raised that anti-corruption efforts may take a hit during the pandemic and new laws to be passed without adequate scrutiny. And as elsewhere in the world, violence against women has increased in Indonesia too, partly because of the impact of COVID-19. This is simply evidence that home is not necessarily a safe place for women, especially during pandemic. However, despite these challenges that the pandemic has posed for democracy, it has also opened up opportunities and spurred some positive developments, which are important to highlight. Those maybe include electoral resilience, political parties have been able to adapt to new situations. Parliaments have been adapting. A role of local governments and federal arrangements have proven critical. And also there has been perhaps a certain momentum of revitalizing civil society in many countries. And I believe Indonesia has been one of those countries with many latent strengths to draw from at the time of crisis. So hopefully through this discussion, we can talk about the reasons for optimism, which gives us all hope. How are we best able to use this crisis for new opportunities? Here are some of the links to our resources on our existing data and also to the upcoming reports. The next State of Democracy, Global State of Democracy in Asia and the Pacific report is to be published in November 2021. And it will look at, that study will investigate the impacts of longer-term impacts of the pandemic on democracy, and also look at some of the recovery efforts globally and in all the regions of the world, and from the point of view of democracy and human rights. So thank you so much for your attention, and back to you, Sri Nurianti.
Thank you, Lina. Well, a lot of challenges actually has been faced by countries. As I said earlier, I think there will be a big question how the government prioritize the strategic program to overcome all of those challenges. So as I said also earlier on, that every country has to keep an eye on the local dynamics of the country. So this time I would like to call upon Professor Dr. Rosalie Archala Hall. She is the professor of the University of the Philippines, Visayas. She is also IPRA fellow, and also she is also API fellow, Asian Public Intellectual Fellow, first batch. She will going to talk about peace process of the Bangsamoro Mindanao. So time is yours, Rosalie. 15 minutes, please. Rosalie? Rosalie, you still, yeah, please. 15 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you very much again to the Indonesian Institute of Sciences and IPRA for inviting me to speak in today's webinar. I'm going to talk Bangsamoro peace process, looking at these 5 items in my roadmap. I will discuss about the political ecology of the Bangsamoro area, the local political dynamics, gains from the peace process, which has been tremendous since the final peace agreement was signed 2 years ago. And of course, some key elements of the new peace agreement with some current setup in the Bangsamoro region. And lastly, with some concluding remark on the challenges ahead, including the impact of the pandemic on the process of institutionalizing these peace gains. I'm very sorry. It seems I could not I could not. Okay, very good. So here's a map that shows where the Bangsamoro area in Mindanao is, which is that colored portion in the bottom of the map of the Philippines. As a space, the Bangsamoro area, of course, is very confined to five provinces, cities in the south. And the inclusion of villages in the adjacent province of North Cotabato. As a space, it's populated mainly by Muslim Filipinos. They have come to the area again in the historical trajectory from the rest of the Philippines, who are mainly Christians, Catholics. This separate identity, of course, is at the basis of the seeking for political autonomy, for self-governance in the area. But I also highlight the fact that in addition to various groups that have articulated a political agenda to becoming autonomous or independent at some point in history, groups that have emerged in the last 2 decades, especially the Abu Sayyaf group and the ISIL-linked Mauti group, which orchestrated the siege in Marawi in 2017. This is also a space that is characterized by strong clan connections. Clans define local politics in this area pretty much so, and the prevalence of a shadow economy because this is an area where a lot of people have very limited means of livelihood. A lot of them are plugged into the informal sector of the economy from which they derive their living. This illicit economy also has confluence with the various armed groups on financing from, say, drug trafficking, types of illicit activities. Finally, this is also a very fluid environment in which martial law was imposed for the past 2 years. So if one talks about democracy in this particular region, one has to take into account as well, while there are gains in the peace process, there are also setbacks, especially in the declaration of martial law for the 2 period covering the siege in Marawi and thereafter. So these are just a blow up of the map where we're talking about. And emphasize again that the area covering the Bangsamoro space is discontiguous, it's scattered. And I think this is something that our Indonesian probably can relate to, is because it's very hard, as you can imagine, to govern that's quite as dispersed as the Bangsamoro region. Provinces are way down south, and then you have the 39 scattered villages in North Cotabato and the 3 cities which are in different islands. Okay, so I mentioned that a part of this challenge with the Bangsamoro has to do with the fact that it has an armed conflict that dates back to the 90s. So there has been a lot of problems of displacement and maldevelopment on account of this armed conflict. And the armed actors also metamorphose along the way. So we first started National Liberation Front, and then the split with the more Islamic Liberation Front, and then the emergence of terror groups, Abu Sayyaf and Maute. So it's a conflict that is primarily complex, precisely because while the government pursues a peace process with the insurgent groups, with the Moro National Liberation Front and MILF, it also has to confront these terror groups in another fashion that's not talking to them at all. So it's bifurcated, by the way, in that particular response track, but within the same space. So about the importance of clans. So where the Bangsamoro regional government exists, is on top of local governments that are mainly controlled by strongmen. By strongmen, we mean here that very powerful political sources backed by government as well as their own private army. And these local strongmen have symbiotic relationship with the national government because they can access government resources in exchange for votes. These strongmen actually control certain bailiwicks, clan-controlled bailiwicks. So, for instance, we talk about Maguindanao being controlled by the Ampatuans or the Sinsuats or consorts. So there always be families that are in control of a particular area within the Bangsamoro space. So well, that apart from the vertical conflict with the MILF and the MNLF, there's also a horizontal conflict, particularly which is a much more serious cause for insecurity for local people in the area. And a shadow economy that again maximizes incentives on the part of local power holders because they derive benefits from these these illicit activities like drug trafficking. So it is an area with high rates of poverty, a lot of displaced people have not returned to their original places, and unsettled land claims. The land claims is a serious problem here because of the history of migration and displacement of original Muslim people who held those lands prior to the resettlement. This is just a short review of the timeline. I will not dwell more into that, except to highlight National Liberation Front started back in the 1970s and concluded in 1996. And with the MILF, it was restarted in 2010, finally producing the Bangsamoro Comprehensive Agreement of the Bangsamoro in 2014. But it took another 4 years before the organic law was passed, providing for the creation of the Bangsamoro Autonomous or Muslim Mindanao. And in place, we now have the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. It's a transitional government until such time that elections for the parliament, the Bangsamoro Parliament, will be held presumably sometime in June 2022. But it will remains to be seen, and there's some developments indicating that that election will be postponed to administration to reopen talks anew with the Moro National Liberation Front. So 2 tracks, so MILF and MNLF. So all of these developments actually point to some very serious gains, so positive. First of all, there's a lot of institutional mechanisms cooperation, particularly ceasefire, between the military and the MILF, MNLF. There's a lot of development assistance, particularly external development assistance that poured into the Bangsamoro area. International IDEA, for instance, we know had been helping a lot in terms of capacity building for the Bangsamoro Transition Authority in getting all the legislations and put together before the transition of money for on social welfare and infrastructure development in the area, particularly through Pamana. So MILF, what's lucky about MILF is that they have had some very good practice on how to run a government even before this agreement. Before they had the Bangsamoro Development Authority and they formed a political party, the United Bangsamoro Justice Party. So in many ways, they are better prepared than their counterparts, the MNLF, 20 years ago when they took control of the government, the ARMM in 2001. So what's also really important to remember is that the self-governance frame under the current peace agreement with the MILF is more robust, longer, and definitely substantial compared to the ones 20 years ago under the ARMM. So here's some kind of elaboration. What are the gains? So first of all, the territory covered by bandits. So much larger area covered. Instead of a presidential setup, they will have a parliament. Again, which will be put up after the election slated for 2022. So it's a very different setup from that in the national government because it will be a parliamentary setup. And then the Bangsamoro regional government actually now has authority to regulate the local governments, whereas that power was never in place under the AREAMM previously. So a lot of attention is being paid on the local government code that the Bangsamoro government with, which precisely will define its relationship with the constituent local governments of the region. And another important thing is that this agreement processes and alternative dispute resolution modes, in addition to the Sharia justice system that has already been put in place in the old ARMM administration. So one of the key principles in the agreement and also in the law is the recognition of the rights of the indigenous people. The Bangsamoro territory is also home to about 3 to 5% Lumads or indigenous people. They that also consider the same space as their homelands. Another important element is that the law actually recognizes the process of mobilization. This is another word that we use for the disarmament, demobilization, and of ex-combatants for the MILF. So that process is already put in place and articulated in the law. Another is that better resource sharing agreements between the national and the Bangsamoro regional government in favor of the regional government. And the numbers highlighted again illustrates this very generous, more generous divide in favor of the regional government for sharing taxes, fossil fuels, metallic minerals, all sorts of mineral development that can occur in the area. So unlike in the previous administration where there is no assurance that a budget will be given to the regional government, it is now written in the law that the regional government will receive, this is an identified sum of money coming from the government that will be given to the regional government to spend as they need it. Okay? However, with respect to the natural resources, what is emphasized is shared jurisdiction, but not ownership. So at least the regional government gets to have a say on how natural resources are utilized, developed within their area. Finally, there's this still unresolved issue of the ancestral domain claims of the indigenous people, recognized in another law, but it has yet to be reconciled with, again, the Bangsamoro sense of, again, the idea that this is their territory as well. So how these two conflicting claims will be supposed to be sorted out once the parliament is put in place. That said, there remains challenges. As I said, a lot of gains had been put to place, but with respect to the local government authorities, there's still lots of problems because within the Bangsamoro area, there are a lot of absentee mayors and rulers who still rely on what they call guns, goons, and gold, and not on principles of accountability with respect to how they govern their particular local areas. There are also backbone, and this is important, and I think this also is emphasized in many histories of former rebel organizations transforming into governments. The need for strong political parties and a reform agenda running office. So again, it's an untested water because they have yet to do their election in 2022. And there also, again, is the presence of all these spoilers for peace, like the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. Just recently, they raided a town in Dato Piang and caused the displacement of tens of thousands of people. And of course, terror attacks remain a serious concern from these ISIL-linked terror groups, the most recent of which was the bombing in Sulu. There are uncertainties and risk from normalization. Although it is proceeding, there are concerns about communal violence, particularly violence involving MIL groups and indigenous people based on land. Has to be worried about. The key concern here is now the MILF now has a hand in government. They form the government. They are the majority of the government in the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. But how well are they going to perform? Can they in fact control the parliament slated for the 2020 election? So a lot really hinges upon how they will perform since they came into power in early last year. So I would now then conclude my remarks by pointing out these four important articles to sort of illustrate the challenges up ahead with respect to the peace process in Bangsamoro. The task of deepening democracy and attaining lasting peace does not end with peace agreement. In fact, it's the beginning. So the hard work begins actually once you sign the peace agreement. So investments towards this goal remain fragile, as attested by news as recent as last year about the BIFF members attacking a police station or armed conflict in one area between Dumans and MILF. All of these, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, has been a strain on the pursuit of peace and lasting peace and deepened democracy in this particular area. What COVID-19 has done is to delay what made the task that was maybe doable in 2 years now makes it seem like insurmountable and cannot be done. So the Bangsamoro Transition Authority in fact has already asked the government if they extended up to January 2020, asking for a 3-year extension and to hold off the elections until 2025 in view of the delay rolling out all these initiatives under the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. But we remain hopeful that self-governance and various forms of dialogues will continue between the government, armed groups, and civil society to translate to meaningful outcomes for the Bangsamoro. And I think a lot of us in the Philippines are really very hopeful that things will move forward, albeit slowly perhaps on account of the pandemic, but will move forward with respect to the end of conflict as we know it in this part of the Philippines. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po. So it is a very timely topic, I guess, this time. And thank you for updating the situation of the peace process of Bangsamoro. Basically, what we are doing today is trying to seek what will be the best way to address all those challenges. So I actually, the committee collect some of the questions. And now I think this is the time for resource person to give an answer of the question that I will going to read. First question is coming from Pak Edi Sufrapto from Ministry of Religion from Medan, North Sumatra. The discovery of this question is addressed to Pak Rector. Hopefully Pak Rector still here. The discovery of a vehicle that was operated under the sea without using an operator or without a crew in a number of Indonesian waters has become a serious concern of a number of parties. This is because the discovery of an object called the unmanned underwater vehicle seems to be a picture of the vulnerability of Indonesia's defense system from foreign parties in underwater waters. What is the role of the Defense University in the discovery of this dangerous foreign object? So, Pak Rector, you have one question to Pak Theo. Pak Edi Sufrapto from Medan also asking, what are the reasons that the Papuan separatists have not been able to make peace like GAM, Gerakan Aceh Merdeka? Then to Pak Theo, what is the fundamental transformations of public services that Indonesia citizen can look forward soon to increasing social and ecological resilience under national security? To Profesor Firman, Ibu Dr. Susilawati, asking you, in the era of democracy, the values of truth shift a lot. We don't know which one is right anymore because each party claims to be the right one, even though we have basically agreed together, which is the basic truth. In practice, it is very difficult to know which one is honest or not because everything returns to the moral responsibility of each individual or groups, which is ultimately considered to be true. Things like this are a source of problems in the democratic process. It is worrying what if things like this continue to happen, it will lead to chaos like what was happening in the Arab Spring and America today. It is important for the region to strengthen the region on the basis of these classic problems and agree to make policies. So the question is how Indonesia and Asia Pacific region can work together to create mutual policies to avoid disruptions. From Ibu Ratna Handayani from Provinsi Kepri, Kepulauan Riau, Riau Island, how to increase and maintain, this is also addressed to Pak Firman, how to increase and maintain public trust to the government. Because there are many conditions that decrease the trust. For example, the omnibus law, the hoax about China intervention, the hoax about COVID-19 vaccine, the sentiment from Islamic groups that disagree with the government and have their own agendas, etc. This condition really disturb government's effort to improve Indonesia's situation. To Lina Rikilatamang, you have two questions from Varit Prabowo. He is from the Cabinet Secretariat. In your opinion regarding the government approach to the FPI or Islamic Defender Front, will it jeopardizing the Indonesia's democratic index in the future, or otherwise it will improve the score? And then from Herli Dwianto, why Indonesia decreasing the democracy? To Rosalie Archalahal, there is one question from Adi Tasya from alumni of Indonesia Defense University. As we know that Mindanao conflict and Aceh has similar root of conflict and have almost the same way of conflict resolution. In 2020, Aceh is commemorating their 15 years of peace gentle agreement. But Acehnese are still asking for the government commitment on MOU of Helsinki, especially for the women's welfare. May you give us suggestion to finish this prolonged sadness and establishing social welfare in an area that has already achieved peace. So there are questions that I can collect from the platform. I would like to ask a resource person. First, if Pak Rector still here, while I'm waiting for Pak Rector, then I would like to ask a response from Pak Theo first. Pak Theo, kindly respond to the question.
Thank you, Ibu Sri, and thank you, distinguished participants, for the questions. What are the reasons that the Papuan separatists have not been able to make peace like GAM? The problem with the situation in Papua is that we are dealing with different kind of organization that different between the Papuan group and Gerakan Aceh Merdeka. GAM is a very solid organization and have a clear leadership internationally and well organized domestically in the past. So it is very, it creates the environment for the government to communicate and build start the communication with the organization. While the problem of Papua, this is actually the different situation. There are groups inside different groups inside Papua, and also in the international level, there is like a coalition of groups in Papuan groups outside Papua, in outside Indonesia, and I think it's difficult to. Yeah, we can communicate with some people who are willing to communicate and also talk, but also there are people who are not willing to communicate and with their own agenda. I think this is something that should be that not help the situation to start the conversation. But the government is open to talk with all parties of Papuan groups. It's been asserted by President Jokowi and also Dr. Muldoko a couple of years ago. And we are very active actually to conduct conversation now with adat group, with religious group, even with the critical group who are also close to the separatist movement. But for us, they are Indonesian citizens and they are part of all the peace building efforts developed by the government now. Even during the pandemic era, we already have several meetings and discussing the human rights settlement and also the prosperity approach in development in Papua, which should go simultaneously. So it's not only a prosperity approach, but also at the same time the settlement of past human rights violation in the under the umbrella of reconciliation spirit. So I think that for Papua issue, reconciliation is more the issue, and it could be achieved through domestic communication and understanding. The second question regarding the public services, the Indonesian citizens can look forward soon to increasing social ecological resilience under national security. If you talk about pandemic, then of COVID-19, then we have to consider COVID-19 pandemic as a threat. Yeah. It should not be viewed mere as an obstacle to economic, social, and cultural activities, or only as a disturbance. Because if we take this pandemic only as obstacles for our activities and a disturbance, then as we see, there are some people who develop the conspiracy theories and false information easily could spreading grow. So we have to change our mindset that COVID-19, or pandemic is actually another type of threat. And we also need to lower our political exposures on COVID-19 pandemic. So in this case, managing media communication and information, including social media, are crucial. And we can in the context of how can we do something for the society, I think spreading the right information is also will help people. People need not only the exploration of a particular topic, but also need fast and immediate response to all topics, especially to prevent negative impact of infodemic. So in the context of peace and security points, I consider COVID-19 pandemics as a non-military or non-conventional threat to the national defense and security. We can go through this mindset. Security in this context is the national security, which comprises of defense and public security. For the national security, because we know we haven't have the national security regulation. Therefore, in response to the threat, we refer to the regulations of the national defense, Indonesian National Armed Forces, Undang-Undang TNI, and the Indonesian Police Force, Undang-Undang Polri, the Indonesian Intelligence, and several others regulations. COVID-19 pandemic also should be considered as a threat, including threat to democracy, etc. In order to not only as an obstacle or disturbance. In order to build peace, there should be standing down of all conflicts and polemics. Priorities should be set to focus on particular subject, the pandemic. Indonesians, as a high in context culture nation, consider group harmony as an important aspect, and the role of leaders as public figures are very strategic and important, especially in responding to threats. if leaders are able to put all differences aside and sit and talk about how to respond to the threat, people will follow. So as leaders, that is one of the contribution that we can provide in order to engage more people, participate in the handling or tackling the pandemic. Ibu Sri, I want to propose some ways to be considered.
Okay.
First, both government and people should have the same perspective that COVID-19 pandemic is a threat. The second, there should be a clear communication pattern, either one way or interactive, relates to COVID-19 pandemic as a threat. More or less have been developed now by the National Disaster Agency, BNPB. There should also real examples about national harmony and implementation of health protocols, law enforcement, anti-corruption spirit, shown by government officials and mobilized people. The third, leaders or political parties, etc., sit together to talk in Indonesian ways or musyawarah, of discussing matters to talk about the importance of considering COVID-19 pandemic as a threat. And that is why Pak Jokowi is very active actually in building communication almost every day with many people virtually in order to build the same pattern of opinion. Budgeting, the fourth, budgeting is crucial. Therefore, corruption is another threat to the activities to overcome pandemic. That's why law enforcement against government official on the issue of corruption is very strict. Fifthly, having the same perception and mindset is important since we need to conduct universal defense system or sistem pertahanan semesta in responding to the pandemic. We need to raise the public awareness, human resources, mobilize people, and also have logistics, economics, and social readiness. Sixthly, since we are talking now about vaccination of COVID-19, vaccination is a method and strategy with the vaccine as the weapon. Public health is the target. But vaccination is not only, it's not only to solve pandemic impacts. It is to build public, it is actually, we need public mindset and political will of all of us that help the security and defense under the context of COVID-19 pandemic as a threat to our security. Thank you, Ibu Sri, for the time.
Thank you so much, Pak. You mentioned a lot on how the proposal for to overcome all those challenges. I write it down 6 proposals that coming from you. And later on, I would like to ask Prof. Firman to respond to the questions. Please, Prof. Firman. You still
Yeah,
please.
suddenly lost the question.
Okay.
Okay, I think the main idea of question is about how to build trust, I think, or some extent Yeah. Okay. I think I found it.
Should I write it? Should I read out?
Yes, please.
Okay. To Professor Firman, the question is from Ibu Dr. Susilawati, the alumni of Defense University. In the era of democracy, the values of truth shift a lot. We don't know which one is right anymore.
Okay. I think that's the point. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I answer that kind of question, and my answer will be started by statement made by Professor Sean Rosenberg from UC Irvine, who said that democracy is devouring itself. So basically, it happened now when there is no such where the people right now, because some politicians let them freely act like expert in politics, including the buzzer, to make comments, to make opinions, and not the authoritative person who do it. And on the other hand, unfortunately, many authoritative persons seems to be gone with the wind, covered by the euphoria of democracy. So the people right now with the not really deep knowledge about politics talk about politics. And suddenly the elites become not being trusted anymore, including the expert of politics, along with maybe the attitude, or maybe also because the chance for people to come to the surface in the political activities or political life. In some circumstances, we don't have any clear guidance. Correct, it is on the one hand is a consequence of democracy, but on the other hand, at least according to Rosenberg, this is the cause why we cannot trust anyone in the end of the day. Anyone like he is the absolute answer for any questions. So in these circumstances, if we don't make a very significant shift by giving more rooms and chance for the expert to talk, trust the academics and trust the politician to talk and to show their opinions based on their understanding, deep understanding about politics and political life, I think the situation will worsen, since everybody could talk, even though it is not necessarily correct. The situation was getting worse if, in fact, politicians sometimes use or pay buzzer to do things that actually should be done by the correct or distinguished academician. So yeah, this is a very unfortunate condition for democracy. And what you said, or what what the essence of your question is, actually represents the situation. And for these things, I think we should think a lot to solve this main problem. Otherwise, again, like Professor Rosenberg, democracy is devouring itself. Yeah, that's what I want to say for the first questions. And part of the first question is what you should do as people in the Asia Pacific areas. I think we should build our democracy properly, and only with that way, when every or each countries in this area can develop a proper democracy, not only procedural democracy, but also substantial democracy, we can join together solidly to avoid any circumstances that can shake the stability of the areas. I think the key is inside in each countries of in Asia Pacific. And I know this is not easy, but I think that's an answer that I can say. And for the second question is from sorry I forgot, but how to build trust for the government. I think basically you cannot buy trust. You maybe can push obedience, but not the trust. This trust happen because people feel there is something that hide it or unusual. So the recipe is actually related to how we can govern the government or can manage the government by transparency, consistency, and more dialogue. And of course other things. But I believe that if we can build transparency, I mean nothing to hide, talk as it is, and do it consistently. If you provide regulation, do it consistently. Don't make any excuse for certain people. And of course, we have to build dialogue, the healthy dialogue between the government and the people. Not only to teach, but also to absorb the idea that given by the people. I think sooner or later, the sense of distrust will disappear. I think that's the short answer that I can make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Firman. Then now I would like to ask Lina to give response to the question given to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a very interesting question from the Cabinet Secretariat, Farid Rabowo, whether the government's approach with the religious organization will jeopardize Indonesia's democratic index in future or improve. At the outset, I need to say that I do not know the particulars of this approach or the nature of this engagement, but I guess the answer is shortly, not necessarily or not automatically for sure. Any future scores will depend on the current and future actions of this and the consequences of such an engagement. Normally, oftentimes, different indices and indexes look at the freedom of religion, and what they mean is people's freedom and ability to exercise their own religion, including the minority religions. Hence, mere engagement with the recognized religious group as such, as I said, depends on the nature and the consequences of such actions. Should the engagement lead to positive outcomes such as reconciliation or increase or improvement of some conflicts, that certainly may only increase the scores of in any country. In terms of the second question of why Indonesia democracy score is decreasing, maybe just to emphasize again that actually Indonesia, historically speaking, Indonesia has made a steady progress on most aspects of the democracy attributes. There hasn't been any dramatic declines over the last 10 years, but what is noteworthy perhaps is the slow progress. And as I mentioned, there have been a couple of declines. They are not dramatic, but declines, however, and on clean elections and on freedom of movement and freedom of expression. I think that's something to look at carefully by the by the Indonesian scholars and civil society actors, researchers. What is behind this data? What is it that why this decline in those scores? Part of the answer is the fact that the one of the scores which relates to absence of corruption, even the initial score has been very low, and there has not been much progress over the since many decades, and that's something that's an attribute that has an impact to many other attributes. So it's hard to make a good progress on number of aspects of clean elections if the corruption stays, or checks on government, if the corruption absence of corruption score remains low. But there may be other reasons over the last 5-10 years in the society that you may want to look at. But nevertheless, to note that Indonesia scores much above Southeast Asian average on when it comes to representative government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lina. And then now I would like to call Rosalie. Rosalie, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, yes.
Kindly respond to the question given to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Adi Tasha, who's a Redo alumni, posed a question about suggesting improvements in social welfare, particularly those from among female ex-combatants. I thought that was a really good question. One of the things that is innovative about the current Bangsamoro government is that it actually is written into the law that this particular government commits itself to the principle of social justice. And the social justice focus commits the regional government to allocate resources for public services under our priority areas, which are health, education, housing, water, power and electricity, provision of relief services for people who are afflicted by disasters, as well as rehabilitation. And rehabilitation is particularly crucial as in the case of Marawi City, which has been destroyed on account of the siege 3 years ago. So by identifying these priorities to dedicate resources for public welfare, the Bangsamoro government actually is set on that particular track. With regards to women, again, under the organic law, a reserved seat for women as a sectoral representative in the Bangsamoro Parliament, and that it's also written in the law that the budget of external official development assistance, external aid that's received by the Bangsamoro government, they will make sure that 3 to 5% of 5 to 30% rather of that external assistance will be spent towards gender and development programs. So gender, of course, includes the welfare of women. So in practice, actually, one of the portfolios that put together once the Bangsamoro Transition Authority was set up was the Commission on Women. So that particular portfolio was set up and occupied almost immediately, as well as the Social Welfare Department, which is currently headed by Attorney Raisa Jajuri. So institutional setup as to prioritization of social welfare. Now, with respect to female combatants, you would be surprised to know that the normalization program has a reintegration component. The social reintegration component actually targets women ex-combatants as a special group. So unlike other reintegration programs elsewhere, which did not really consider women, the women were invisible. in this particular normalization process, they are identified as a target group, and definitely will be made sure they participate in the reintegration program. Our government now that has in place, I think a reintegration package of about 1 million pesos or 20,000 US in terms of cash and other benefits that are given to them. The inclusion of women, I think, is crucial, and making sure again that they are not mined by this peace process.
Thank you,
Thank
Rosalie.
you.
Maraming salamat po. Is there any response from Pak Rektor? If not, then I think we are 5 minutes to conclude the conference today. First of all, I would like to convey our gratitude to all distinguished speakers and guests for today's seminar. Before we conclude, I would like to ask the speakers to send the PowerPoint presentation to us so we could share it with the audience. From the seminar today, we found out that there are a lot of challenges has been faced by any countries, and no countries that are not facing challenges on democracy, peace and security, especially due to COVID-19 pandemic. So I think this is also giving grievances to us, but also giving an inspiration to the collaborations avenue of government, CSO, political parties, activists, scholars, academics, and also basically hand in hand of everyone to make a better life of the nation. I know that the government has to prioritize the program, the strategic program. In one hand, also we know that many stakeholders also trying to do all the efforts for their best to avoid and try to fulfill, to overcome the challenges that been faced by all of us. So thank you so much for very valuable insight for today's seminar. Thank you, and we are so sorry for any inconveniences for today's seminar. Kindly register yourself for the e-certificate, and later on we will going to send the certificate through the email. And we are sorry for any inconveniences, and thank you once again. We do hope that you are all stay safe, and see you in the next seminar. Thank you. Back to you, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sri Nuryanti, for moderating a fruitful and inspiring discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close the seminar officially, again, the organizing committee would like to deliver high appreciation to all the speakers for their valuable contribution to the seminar, as well as we also want to thank you to all the distinguished guests and participants for your kind attendance and attention. The seminar is now closed. Good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Sandy Raharjo. See you in the next seminar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sri Nuryanti.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Rosalie. Thank you, Lina. And thank you, Dr. Manish. Thank you, Prof. Mayer, Prof. Nuka, and Pak Theo, and also Pak Rektor. Thank you all. Stay safe.
Stay safe.